All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Thompson.
And I'm Allison Grimberg Funes, and this is Content and Coffee, the podcast for people who are navigating big changes in the industry and want to stay on top of their game.
Our focus, the content that brings users in,
and the UX writing that keeps them engaged and successful. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into Content and Coffee. If you listened to our last episode, we dove into the user's journey and started with stage 1 of 4, which was awareness. And today we're going to be talking about stage 2, where the UX writers step in, and we are calling that the consideration stage. To give a quick little rundown, the objective of a writing team during this phase is to make sure that users are getting started quickly and that they're confident in whatever goal they're trying to achieve with your product, and they clearly know what their next step is. So this is typically a stage that is more so run by the UX writer. The marketing writer has passed off the baton. And if you aren't familiar with that analogy, last week we introduced this analogy where when it comes to writing teams, it really is a matter of handing off the baton from one to another in different parts of the user journey. So at this point, during the awareness stage, the marketing writer or someone like Emily was really taking charge, and she has now passed on the baton to someone like me in a UX writing role. But similarly to a relay race, I'm really going off of her momentum. She's definitely going to be there for marketing support throughout this phase to help me reinforce the brand voice and input certain practices. For example, email series where, like maybe product marketing writing would come up. But the main goals of this stage from a copy perspective are to get a user from point A to point B while reducing friction and overwhelm, or cognitive load is a phrase that we use pretty often in the industry. Basically, we don't want to make people think too hard. And we want to build user trust with clarity and support. And finally, guide the user in the next step within the product. And if you work for a company where you're not working on a product, you're working on a service, this is still applicable. You're guiding the user to fill out that contact form and book a sales call or book a meeting. Before I go into the different touch points of this stage, Emily, did you want to add anything about the marketing writer's role here?
Honestly, you nailed it. It is passing the baton. I think there's a little bit of an element of I might hold on a little bit as I pass it.
Don't let
Because
go.
sometimes, or we might carry it together for a few steps. But I say that because I think there's still of an element of persuading the reader and also engaging in that storytelling piece as well. And you want to shepherd the audience right along. And I think that we can do that in partnership. I think at our first podcast, we talked about how it's like when you're in a car, UX writing is like the GPS that is giving you the directions on where to go, and marketing writing is the music that's playing or how your seats feel or whatever. It's the experience. And so there's a little bit of the experience that's needed in this too. And just really quick side note, I actually worked at a job where I had to do both of these roles. I was the marketing writer and they just didn't have enough staff. And I also did the tooltips and welcome walkthroughs and all of that type of content as well. I did both. So you can also be one writer and wear a couple different hats.
Yeah, and that's actually how I got started in UX writing. I'd been doing content writing, copywriting, and there was a need in the business,
Yeah.
and there was no one to fill it. And up until then, it had been the role of the product designers and UX designers. And I knew the voice, tone, and style of the brand and was able to wear both of those hats interchangeably, just like you were, Emily.
Yeah, so let's talk about how to create great content for the consideration stage of the funnel. Allison, can you talk about how can AI help us do that more efficiently and more accurately? And then what are some types of content that really help in this stage of the funnel?
There's so many touch points when it comes to UX writing in the consideration phase. You have everything from sign up pages, account creation, profile creation, maybe welcome screens or messages that come up in little tooltips or modals that give a user contextual help on how to use a product. Sometimes that UX writing is leading to a video that has a message from a founder or a demo walkthrough. Maybe it's a free trial experience. A big one is getting the user to self serve by heading over to the FAQ section, which Emily, you spoke to in a great way in the last episode, going over the awareness stage. And another really large one, especially in the product world and the world of SaaS, is the comparison content, where a company is utilizing copy to compare what they offer and their value proposition to that of a similar product in the space that's a competitor. But AI is impacting these things, and it's really allowing us as writers to give us an extra little oomph and create content that resonates with users more quickly and more successfully. For example, let's talk about sign up and account creation. There are AI driven forms of optimization that will suggest, for example, maybe you want the content longer or shorter here. Maybe you want to use these fields based on how people typically progress through filling out a form. Another big one is helping with fraud detection and verification. We often have to collaborate with compliance and legal teams to make sure that we are creating a product, especially when it comes to forms, that will discourage fraudulent input, but it can help build in verification to make sure that the people who are consuming your content are real people. And finally, it is empowering you really to personalize those sign up flows based on a segment of customers. So maybe if you have their email address or a different social media login that they use to sign in and create an account with your product, AI tools can help make suggestions for the sign up flow that will make it more intuitive for those users.
Yeah, for example, if I use Facebook a lot, AI could learn that about me and then suggest on a certain websites or product sign up, Facebook as a potential single sign on, right? To
And
make my life easier.
yeah, and
Cool.
sometimes people are, oh, I don't like it when it's like, can we have access to X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, yes, I use all these technologies, have access to the fact that I belong to this Facebook group. I'm fine with it if it's going to help you optimize this other experience for me. When a user is becoming introduced to your product or service, AI can really help to personalize any type of content on welcome screens or welcome messages. A big one is localization. Maybe you use a product and you're on the East Coast, and I want to write copy that says something like, "Good morning, Emily." But maybe Emily's in Thailand, and AI can allow the content to be dynamic and understand that. So if Emily signs into the product from Thailand, it would say, "Good evening, Emily." And it's those little touches that make a big difference. I actually have been using a product where it's been nighttime and it tells me good morning, and it really throws me off. I'm like, wait a minute, am I dreaming? Where does it think I am right
Also,
now?
I thought you were gonna say, I thought you were gonna say good morning in Thai to me. I
Oh
thought you were
no,
gonna.
yeah, I don't speak Thai.
I was like, oh my
I was
gosh, she knows Thai.
No, I was just thinking one of my friends has been traveling in Thailand and we've been talking on the phone, but there's a huge time difference. So I've just been
Yeah,
thinking about how if I want to call my friend, I have to wait these hours.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like I had mentioned before, when you're getting a tour of a product through tooltips and modals, AI can really help to add contextual layers to that experience and help a writer personalize microcopy throughout those experiences. If there are in app notifications or an email product marketing flow that's involved in this part, and that's also where marketing writers would come in to help. AI might suggest, hey, after a user has been in the product for X amount of time, maybe send them this notification to suggest this action, or if they get to this point in the product but they don't reach a certain point, maybe that means we should kick off an email flow. And you'll see this a lot in retail, right? Like, how many times have I gotten an email that's, you left things in your cart and you did not buy them, which was my plan because I'm trying to be better about Amazon. But that's UX writing and marketing working in tandem. And oftentimes there are AI tools or tools that utilize AI to help inform that process. Free trial experiences. That's another one. A lot of products, especially when you're working with MVP experiences, there are a lot of companies who want to monitor a usage of a free trial and what types of features within that free trial experience are being most utilized. This can give a company the ability to take pause, think of their overall roadmap and strategy, and say, customers love this feature and they're getting it for free. Is there a way to scale that feature and offer it in an expanded way and have that as part of a paid experience? So AI would help with that. And then we talked also about comparison content, which, to be honest, often works hand in hand with those freemium and free trial experiences. A lot of UX writers have had to pen the copy of those charts that compares product A to product B to product C and all of the different features that are really aiming to target that high intent, or Emily, what you talked about in our stage one awareness, what is really keeping the user or customer up at night. AI can help to optimize for that content using data like the usage of a feature, for example, and also using AI for research on competitors and their products. And finally, chatbots, virtual assistants, but conversational design is a niche within UX content design that involves the chatbot experience and thinking about the questions that user customers are asking a chatbot and how can we make sure that we're mapping them appropriately to different parts of our product or our site so that they can self-serve faster.
If you had to give a top 10 tips for UX writers as they're creating this type of content, what would you say? What would your 10 tips be?
I think the first one is to be clear and concise. When it comes to the AI systems, those are going to prioritize that straightforward, unambiguous language. And an example is using instructional microcopy. You don't need to be flowery on a CTA button. You really want it to be as clear as possible. For example, drag files here to upload. You could even A/B test that with something even more succinct like drag files. The other is write conversationally. Use language that will resonate with them. And often this is informed by user research. And ideally, marketing writers and UX writers can work closely with user research and customer research teams. But for example, like for some tones, if a user completes a task, you might say, nice, you're all set. Give them a tone that matches the brand. And speaking of that, you want to make sure that you are using consistent terminology. So if you're using a tone in one experience in a product, most likely you're going to want to use the same tone in another area of the product unless there's an entirely different strategy and goal for that part of the experience. For example, if you're working on a banking app and they're testing a new interface for like kids to understand finance, that tone's going to be different than the banking side of the app that's for adults. But overall, you want to keep that tone consistent so that they can stay focused on what they're there to do with the product and not get distracted. And for those who might be listening or watching and thinking, how much of a difference does it make? I can tell you that I've worked on projects where 2 to 3 words can make or break a product by millions of dollars. It makes a difference.
Does.
Another tip would be to anticipate their intent. You want to be thinking as a UX writer, both forward and back. You want to understand what they're going to want to do next and also where likely they're coming from. It's another great way to use AI, right? What is their path? A lot of AI tools will allow you to map clicks and how much time users are spending in different places. I think testing is one of the most important tips that I would give. You want to make sure that you're testing out content with real users. You can test with AI if you've taken the time to really train a large language model on the type of response that your customers would likely have. But if you have the resources and the time to test with real people, I would highly suggest it. And obviously, keep iterating. Just because a piece of copy works within a product doesn't mean that something else may not work better in the future. So, if you have a successful test, great. Revisit it next quarter. Obviously, this depends on a roadmap. And then, lastly, this is certainly not least at all, but I think utilizing tools that help to ensure you're designing with an inclusive mindset and following accessibility guidelines. I'm talking about the WCAG guidelines. If anyone is curious, go look those up. It is fascinating. But you want to make sure that the product that you're writing for and writing is designing is easily accessible by any user despite a differing ability to consume the content. So, just for example, I want to make sure that I'm writing content in a way that is just as easily understood by someone who is looking at an app as it is understood by someone who is using a screen reader to read out the content on the app. So, those are probably my top tips for UX writers. Obviously, I could go on, but I think when it comes to consideration, that's really what I like to call the Spark Notes version of the different types of touch points.
Yeah, there's just so much content that falls under this wheelhouse, right? And there's just incredible ways that AI is actually helping us get better and better at writing it. Thank you so much for going through all that. It was incredibly helpful.
You know what? Going through it, I was like, "Ooh, I haven't done that in a while."
Yeah.
It's so interesting, and oftentimes, like in projects, you're really focused on one thing, so you lose touch with the huge breadth that is what we do. But for those of you who are listening, we would love to hear your experiences with different touch points, what you may have used AI tools for. Maybe you have a touch point and you found, you know what? AI does not work here. We want to hear those stories too.
I want to learn.
So, thank
Yeah.
you for hanging out with us here on Content and Coffee. If you enjoyed today's episode, a follow or hitting that subscribe button goes a long way. So, we would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. Until next time, keep brewing great content ideas. Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers.